Hello, and welcome to the third week of Read It First, a podcast dedicated to discussing a new book each week, hosted by me, Lisa Gray. So this week we are discussing the book The Pale Highway by Nicholas Conley. It's about Gabriel Schist, who is spending his remaining years at Bright New Day, a nursing home. He once won the Nobel Prize for inventing a vaccine for AIDS, but now he has Alzheimer's and his mind is slowly slipping away. When one of the residents comes down with a horrific virus, Gabriel realizes that he is the only one who can find a cure. Encouraged by Victor, an odd stranger, he convinces the administrator to allow him to study the virus. Soon reality begins to shift and Gabriel's hallucinations interfere with his work. As the death count mounts, Gabriel is in a race against the clock in his own mind. Can he find a cure before his brain deteriorates past the point of no return? I have to admit, I did not read the synopsis before choosing this book for this week. I saw the title of The Pale Highway and a biohazard sign, and I figured, oh, it's definitely going to be about an infectious disease. I was thinking more along the lines of a zombie virus. I could not have been more wrong. At the beginning of the book, there's a dedication to patients and families of Alzheimer's. Nicholas Conley, the author who wrote this book, spent time in a nursing home as a licensed nursing assistant. I apologize if I go back and forth between licensed and certified because of the fact that I was a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, for 4 years. But as I said, Nicholas Conley was an LNA for many years. He got to see what it was like in the nursing homes so that he could actually write good insight into this novel. And in other books of his, evidently he does the same. Working in a nursing home is definitely a different environment. You go to visit your loved ones in nursing homes, and it feels different. You work in a nursing home, and it's a totally different experience. You're seeing the patients at their best and their worst. Mostly at their worst, unfortunately. You're the one who's having to clean after them. You're basically being a parent to them, even though they have their own grown children who are likely parents of their own at this point. Some of them, they can't do anything for themselves. You're feeding them, you're washing them, you're cleaning them, you're changing them. You are it for them. Some of the certified nursing assistants, licensed nursing assistants, some of them are like Natty in the book. They don't really care. They don't think about the fact that these individuals deserve respect. Look at what they've gone through. Nah, they don't care. That they're there to do a job, to take care of the residents, and do the bare minimum. They throw the patients around, and they usually end up getting fired because of different suits that go up against the nursing home due to fractures that shouldn't have occurred to patients, or bumps and bruises and such that are out of the normal. And then you've got other nursing assistants that care. We sit down and talk with the residents because they're lonely. They have each other, kind of, but not every single one of them's with it enough to actually hold a conversation. But if you sit and talk to a resident of a nursing home, you're going to learn so much history and learn it so much better than in a history class. Of course, those in the Alzheimer's unit, they're not as with it. But you'd be amazed at what they remember. They'll remember those old things, the things of whenever they were children. They'll remember their teenage selves. Sadly, some of them revert back to their infantile selves. I luckily only had to deal with a small handful of those because they broke my heart. But then you have the smart ones, the ones who used to be physicians, and the ones who used to do amazing things. And you would sit and talk with them, and it was just amazing. In this book, there is a LNA called Harry. He is a microbiology student who starts working in Bright New Day nursing facility where the main character, Gabriel, is located. and he is just beside himself getting to meet the Gabriel Schist, the creator of the Schist vaccine that cured AIDS and HIV. I mean, let's face it, if anyone was able to make a vaccine for that, they would be amazingly famous. The people who created the COVID vaccine, they're not famous. Not really, but there's so much conjecture of this COVID vaccine because people consider it having been created fast when in reality, scientists have been working on it since the SARS pandemic. So it's not really anything new. But the idea of creating something that helps the immune system and that can fight AIDS, that is astounding. So obviously, Gabriel is a genius. And the sad part is those who keep using their minds are usually the ones that don't have as much of an impact with Alzheimer's. But you kind of see some of that throughout the book. Gabriel, every morning that he wakes up, first is very confused. He's wondering where he is. Why is he in this prison? And then it dawns on him, no, I'm in a nursing home. He's like, okay, I've determined where I am. I am Gabriel Schist. I am 72, 73 years old. He doesn't remember. But then he goes through the Fibonacci sequence because that is kind of his lifeline. He knows that as long as he can do the Fibonacci sequence, he knows that he's okay. He knows that his mind's not completely gone. He also looks at his board of pictures that have names with them and makes sure that he remembers the name to the face. At points he forgets, and it utterly distresses him. He's also distressed at points because he remembers going to sleep, and the next thing he knows, he's walking in the hallway butt naked. And he's incredibly embarrassed. You don't really think about the fact that the nursing home residents get embarrassed because after a certain time of being a nursing assistant, it's just routine for you. You're cleaning them, you're changing them. You don't think about it. But you want to make sure to give them that respect and that privacy that they so desire. It's no different than if you were younger. You would not want to have to use the bathroom in front of 30 different people or with the hallway door wide open where anyone and everyone can walk past and see you. But it is definitely a little heart-wrenching reading about his experience. And I have to say, after working in a nursing home, you can definitely imagine it. Having talked to a lot of patients, being afraid of different nursing assistants because they were rough with them. They would throw them around, they would not listen to them, they basically just treated it as another to-do on their checklist. And then you had others that we knew that if we sat down and talked with them, and that if we took our time with them, it would actually be more efficient. They want to be remembered for who they were. They want that respect. And honestly, they 100% deserve it. Not just because they're humans, but also because of the fact that they have lived a hell of a life at that point. Plus, if any of you are listening that have ever been a nursing assistant or in the healthcare field, think of it like, how would you like your grandparent to be treated? One that you loved, not one that was horrible to you. Or better yet, how would you like to be treated when you can't walk? When you can't wipe your butt? When you can't hold your own urine? In the book, Gabriel talks about having incontinence of the bladder. He wakes up and there's pee in his bed and he's so embarrassed, but he does not want to wear the Depends, the diapers that they put on them, because he knows that that's just one more step towards the disease taking hold. But then we jump back to his younger self, whenever he was a kid, and you learn about how he was just different than everyone else. He didn't have friends, he didn't go outside and play. He would stay inside with a book and his blackboard and his notes. And his parents were so worried about him because they thought he was special. Well, they were right, he was special. They called a priest over, and the priest became one of Gabriel's closest confidants. The priest looks at the kid, talks to Gabriel, and realizes he's an absolute genius. The kid is looking at the possibility of the immune system being its own entity. He is just utterly fascinated with how the immune system works, which, to be fair, it's super complicated and astounding. So I understand the just awe that young Gabriel is in. He continues his intelligence throughout his life. He goes on and gets a degree in immunology. And while he's getting his degree, he gets to meet his future wife, Yvonne. She is a free spirit that is nothing like him. She is open-minded, she is outgoing, and she just fits with people. Whereas he feels so awkward, and the only way he feels that he can fit in is to drink and party with everyone really hard. So when Yvonne and Gabriel meet, he's out surfing with a bunch of his friends, and she's in utter awe of how amazing he is at it. At that point, she was sunbathing naked. So she realizes it's close to sunset, and they're going to come in soon. So she puts on a cover-up, and she goes down to where all their stuff is. She comments about how much she loves the California vision of just leaving your stuff and trusting that no one's going to take it. I doubt that it's that way anymore, but I've never been to California, so don't judge me on that comment. But when they come in, she's talking to all of his friends, and he's kind of standing in the background a little shyly. His looks utterly attract her at the first go. She asks him how he learned to surf like that, and he gives a comment about just kind of along the lines of physics. Seeing the push and the pull of the waves, doing the calculations in his head, and just determining based on those factors where and how would be most efficient to surf. Plus, he makes a comment later that he makes sure to do balancing exercises beforehand so that his body's ready to balance on that board. It's kind of brilliant, honestly. And then Yvonne makes sure that he knows where she lives because she knows she wants to see him again. As it goes on, they have a great relationship, but at one point she asks a friend where he's at, and the friend gives her an address. She pulls up, she finds him, and he's doing a crap ton of shots. I think he had done 13 shots at that point, and she thought that he was teaching them, but he was making comments and calculations on how much alcohol he could drink. He also had a white substance on his nose. At that point, he sees her, and she turns around and takes off because she's like, I cannot stand here and watch the man I love destroy himself. She tells him this. And he's like, I'm just doing it to fit in. This is the only way I know how. This is the only way I can figure out how to make friends because I'm different. And it's true, he is different. He's special, as most geniuses are. They're very misunderstood because they just don't have that socialization talent of majority of the population. He promises that he'll stop. He graduates college, him and Yvonne get married, they have a house together, and each time that he gets fired for having a quote-unquote crackpot theory for believing the immune system to be able to become own entity, he goes back to the drinking. During one of his last firings, Yvonne comes home early while he's trying to down 2 packs of beer. He tries to hide it, and he's trying to keep her away so that she can't smell it on him. But she's excited because she has news to tell him. And at about that point, she sits in his lap, realizes that he's drunk. She tells him that she's pregnant. His only response is a drunken "oh." Later on, he looks back on this moment and realizes, what the hell, he should have given a better response. But he was kind of in shock. So him and Yvonne keep having arguments until the point that she's just fed up. She can't do it anymore. She has the bag packed and she looks at him and goes, "I'm leaving." He goes, "Well, those bags look really heavy." And she's like, "It's me or the booze. You either give it up now for good, or I'm going to move with my family, my parents, in New Hampshire. They just bought a house up there." Keep in mind, he is currently living in California. That means his wife and future child will be all the way across the US. But unfortunately, he chooses the bottle, or she moves all the way across the country, and he doesn't get to meet his daughter until she's 10 years old. And the only reason that he got to meet her and start talking with her is because of him developing the vaccine for HIV and AIDS. After Yvonne left, he finally realized he had to make a change, or else he would never get to meet his daughter, and he might lose the woman that he loves more than anything forever. Unfortunately, he did. So he finally decided, as the house is nearing foreclosure, that he just needs to sell it, cut his loss there. He goes and buys a sailboat. His dad had taught him sailing whenever he was younger, and he loved it. He made a little laboratory in the bottom of his boat because he didn't have any investors. The priest that had been his friend when he was younger is still his friend now, giving him the drive to create this vaccine that he had imagined for decades. When he was first imagining it, it was the 70s. He knew that something big and bad was coming, but he didn't know what. And it's valid. In the 70s, we didn't know AIDS and HIV was coming. And he talks about the fact that it started in animals in Africa. And it did. We've come very close to getting AIDS treated. We can't cure it. And we've got some prophylactic stuff to help before the fact. But AIDS is a very cunning virus. It keeps changing. And if you try to do just one medication, it won't work. When you're talking about AIDS therapy, you're talking of 2 to 3 different medications that people are taking at a time in order to fight the virus. And so Gabriel finally created the SHIS vaccine, the cure for HIV and AIDS. He gets nominated and wins the Nobel Prize. At this point, Yvonne sees this and realizes that I think he's sober and I trust him to start talking with our daughter. So they start communicating over the phone. And finally, whenever she's 10 years old, he gets to meet her in person for the first time. She is so much like him. She is very shy, she's intelligent, but she has the beauty of her mother. And Yvonne, upon seeing him, because she went out with her daughter, she knew that he was sober. And she said, "Hey, we're going to stay with a friend. Do you want to keep Melanie with you for a week? Get to know your daughter." Of course, he is ecstatic. At one point, he thought he would never even get to meet his daughter, but now he gets to spend time with her. And at the beginning of the book, Melanie had just finished a whole summer with her father, and she misses seeing him so much. Mom ends up dying from cancer, and Dad gets the Alzheimer's. She moves him from California to New Hampshire to Bright New Day nursing facilities to be taken care of. She's in New Hampshire, so it's fitting that she brings him with her. But she doesn't visit very often. She only comes about once every 3 weeks because it's hard. If you've ever had a relative with dementia, you'll understand. Talking to them and seeing that they don't know who you are. Seeing them disappear for a little bit inside of their minds. Seeing the lights on with nobody home. Or getting told the same thing over and over and over again. When in the past, they wouldn't have. They would have remembered. Unfortunately for Gabriel, he remembers at points that he has this disease, which I think is probably the most horrid part of the disease. But As Gabriel is in this Bright New Homes nursing facility, a new virus pops up. The ironic part is that he is told about this virus before it even appears by a little slug. And it's a very interesting thing because he's questioning if he's actually seeing the slug once it starts talking to him. Before the slug talks to him, he's like, oh, good God, this freaking nursing home has an infestation of slugs. Like, they need to fix this. But once the slugs start communicating with him, he's like, I think they're a figment of my imagination. But the slugs warn him, hey, a new virus is going to be coming tomorrow and hitting this place. And he's like, okay, I've completely lost my mind. The next day, he sees this woman start yelling about hurting, that she's hurting, she's in so much pain. And then suddenly she opens her eyes and they're all black. She starts to have different disease manifestations. And he stops and goes, is this the virus that the slug was telling me about? It definitely puts a different perspective because you're wondering the entire time you're reading this book, is this legitimate? Or is this just all a figment of his imagination? Because the entire book is set from his perspective. But there's parts where you're like, I don't think it is. As more and more people get this virus, he meets up with this older gentleman named Victor. He's unsure exactly why Victor is in the nursing facility, but it is what it is. Victor is dressed to the nines in a tuxedo. He plays chess with Gabriel and ends up being quite a confidant and help pushing him to realize that he's the only one that can make a vaccine for this new virus. So Gabriel's like, you know what? After discussion, I was able to create the SHIS vaccine for HIV on a freaking sailboat. I can try to make a cure for this, but I don't do cures, I do vaccines. He's an immunologist, so he should be able to do both. So he goes up to the administrator, goes, hey, I've already had my lawyer draft all of these documents. I want to have a bigger room. I want to have a microscope, test tubes, all the stuff that I need. Here's a list of everything I need to create a cure for this virus, because I think I can do it. Ironically, the administrator actually complies. They move him to a bigger room with a new roommate. He's by the window for the first time in forever, and he loves the heat from the window because he's always cold. And he realizes that he never wants to be without a window again. But he's asking for samples, and they're telling him no. He's like, well, how can I create a cure for this if I can't get a sample? So even though he knows he shouldn't, even though all of the patients that are with the black virus are under a quarantine, he ends up sneaking into a room, and he dons personal protective equipment, and he gets a sample of blood. The first one, he got a sample of blood from a diabetic test strip. The second one, he got a sample directly from the source. And then later on, he gets a sample of vomit from a patient who underwent a quick and hard-hitting death from the virus, probably due to the stress, or that is what Gabriel believes, because he's sitting playing chess with Victor one day, and another one of the residents is sitting near the fish tank in the lobby. At that point, the other resident starts going, it hurts, and just basically keeps, everything hurts. And before that, he kept commenting that he wants to go upstairs. I think it's kind of their little prequel of, hey, something's going wrong. While the aides are trying to get him stopped, they're putting him under significant stress. They're trying to hold him down. They're trying to get him injected, but he won't stand still for it. He keeps trying to get to Gabriel. And during this, he gets what appears to be smallpox, where the blisters pop and send blood all over all of the nurses and the nursing assistants, the floor, everything. And then he gets elephantiasis, where all of the lymph nodes swell in the lower extremities of the legs. And so many other different presentations of illnesses just all populate through it at once. And Gabriel is just in awe. And they're having to tackle this guy, and he's yelling at them, "Hey, stop doing this. You're making it worse." About that time, the poor resident vomits up black slime. All of the nurses finally realize that he's dead. There's nothing we can do. We just need to quarantine the area, clean it up, get the body out of the way. Well, while this is happening, Gabriel realizes that something is coming alive in the vomit. He describes it as a black, almost sperm-looking creature with a round head, with sharp teeth, and with a tail. He tries to catch it as it flees. He's unable to. He's previously had a stroke. He doesn't move like he used to, and it's gone. He's upset because he tried to get everyone else to see it, but they didn't. And so later, slugs come back to him and tell him, "Hey, it's okay. We'll help you get another sample." So he's able to get another sample elsewhere. The slugs actually help him quite a bit throughout the entire story. It's interesting. But as we progress through, Gabriel believes that he has created this cure. But after he saw that little thing, he realizes that it's not a virus. Because viruses don't produce living things that can live on their own. They just don't. So he realizes that instead of a virus, he kind of needs to make a poison for whatever creature is living inside of these people. He goes, "I need to make a name for it." The slugs look at him, they're like, "It already has a name. They're schistlings." Which, at that point, Gabriel realizes that every single person in the world who has received his vaccine has a schistling in them. So technically everyone who received the vaccine for the HIV and AIDS virus has this disease in them. The disease causes them to go through all sorts of different infections that they went through in their lives. And then whenever it's finally ready, it ejects itself from the body in the vomit, and that is the death of the host. Come to find out, these schistlings are actually our immune systems. Thanks to the vaccine that he created for AIDS and HIV, our immune system became its own entity. Gabriel finally decides that he needs to destroy this floating mass that they show out in the ocean, which they akin it to a oil spill, and are stating that, "Oh, we'll get it cleaned up in a week." So the black virus has been considered a new flu. So no one is in a panic. I mean, it's very akin to what they did with us. But to be fair, even whenever we saw all these deaths, no one really cared. I think that says more for our population than anything. Why wouldn't we care if people are dying? We're overpopulated, who cares? It's not me that it's happening to. But luckily, Gabriel doesn't think like that. He wants to help save people. I mean, that's why he created the vaccine to begin with. He didn't want anyone else to suffer. So he is determined that he is going to cure this schistling infestation. And he knows the only way to do that is to take this vial that he is determined destroys it by taking a sample from a living patient and inject it into the entity in the ocean. But the slugs warn him that, hey, if you do this, it's probably going to revolt. They all talk to each other, so everyone who has a schistling in them is going to die if you do this. Gabriel's, "Well, I can't do that. I think my daughter received the vaccine, which means she has one of those in her. I can't let my daughter die." So he tries to break out. He had told Victor about the breakout, and evidently Victor had told others. Because where his window had a screen that was removable before, now had an alarm on it. He's trying to get the alarm to stop, trying to get the screen open, when Natty, the really rude and horrific LNA, comes in, knocks him down with Avian. It's an Ativan cocktail that knocks them out. And they move him to level 5 ward, which is the lockdown unit. Before this point, he wasn't in the lockdown unit because he wasn't bad enough. At one point, Harry comes in because he's checking on Gabriel. And he's like, well, he's been non-vocal and passed out for the past 3 weeks. Gabriel is coming to at this point and goes, oh my god, how many more people have died in this time? He feels responsible for every death because of the fact that if it wasn't for his vaccine, none of it would have happened. So Victor finally shows back up. At this point, he kind of realizes Victor is a figment of his imagination. No one else knows about Victor. No one else has seen him. They don't know what he's talking about whenever he's talking about Victor. Victor tells him to trust the slugs. That the slugs, which the head slug's name is Michael, they will help him get out of the room and cure the black virus. So Gabriel goes, you know what, let's do this. So Michael's slug comes back. Victor disappears suddenly, but he'd make sure that Gabriel closes the door, and he tells him that I'll make sure the door stays closed so that you will have time to escape. With the help of Michael the slug, he's able to escape. And it does appear as though this legitimately more or less happened because the aides are talking later that the door was shut, like they could not get it open. And when they finally did get it open, he was gone. With the help of Michael, he gets down to the ocean, which is 20 miles away, and they go into the water. They take a sample of the shit sling that came out of bodies have all gone to this being. So he takes a sample from the center, and they go up to the great sky amoeba, which we akin to God. And Gabriel goes, you know what, I'm angry. I'm angry that you gave me this mind that was able to create this, because if it wasn't for me, this wouldn't have happened. I'm angry that you made me feel so alone all of my life. He just completely unloads everything on the sky amoeba. But he also looks over at the Shizzling, which at this point has basically created a form that looks like a spider with his own face, and at the end of the spider's legs, it has hands with 5 fingers. Very creepy. Not sure how he created that, but whew. But at that point, Gabriel was pleading his case, and then the Shizzling pleads its case of trying to survive, and really all they want is to go back home and be within Gabriel. And Gabriel tells them that it can't happen. I never took my own vaccine. But ironically, Gabriel had put his vaccine in a coat that he wore, puts the poison on them. He goes, okay, so you can die and take everyone else out. Or I can inject myself with my vaccine. You can live within me like you've wanted all this time. I know it will kill me. I know I will have no more neurological functions because you will take over. But in return, I want you to cure everyone. And then he makes one last request. All of his friends in the Brightside Nursing Facility are cured of their diseases. His friend that has Parkinson's no longer shakes, she's able to move. Another one who couldn't walk, suddenly able to walk and move. Those with the dementia, they're cured. And he's seeing this as he's returning back. And he's happy. So he finally returns to the nursing facility, where he is basically a vegetable. He's not able to speak, he's not able to move, he's not able to do anything. Harry, his LNA friend, comes in because he's showing around a new LNA. And he walks into Natty, changing Gabriel, in the middle of the room with the door wide open, privacy curtains open, not caring if anyone else can see him. He goes off on her, tells her that it's unacceptable that if she doesn't actually care to take care of the elderly patients, She doesn't belong here. And if he ever sees her treating another patient like that, he will report her and make sure she gets fired. And the woman that's with him, the new aide, just looks at him and goes, "That was amazing." And he's talking to her about Gabriel and just stating how an amazing guy he was and that he made this vaccine. And then a couple of months before, right before he just became a vegetable, basically, he disappeared for an entire night. And he's like, "I'd heard him say something about the beach, so I drove down there, but I didn't see him. But the next morning, someone found him halfway to the beach. And everyone that had the back virus was cured." It's kind of interesting that the virus wasn't a figment of his imagination, because I questioned if it was at points. The slugs evidently were, but there's also points where you're like, were they? Because how else did he get so far? How did it all get cured spontaneously overnight, the night that he was missing? It makes it really interesting. And then the new aide also asks why there's not a lot of people in the nursing home. Harry makes the comment, well, they didn't need it anymore. So again, it makes you wonder if some of that was true. So at the very end, Gabriel tells him to listen. And I don't remember what all he said, but he basically gave the whole idea of, here's my note, read them, use them, learn from my mistakes. And then he passes on, and his celestial being goes to visit his daughter. She's sad. I don't know if she's sad because she's already been aware that he's died, but she's looking at pictures of herself and her father when she was younger, and stating how she wishes she had seen him more. How once every 3 weeks wasn't enough. He tells her it's okay. And she can kind of tell that he's there, somehow, even though he's not. The last thing he does before he goes is he touches her head. And she goes and touches her head afterwards, kind of like she felt it. And that's the end. The book goes through the life of a very intelligent man who was very misunderstood, but that ended up saving the world multiple times. Anyways, if you haven't read it, I definitely recommend it. You may shed some tears. I know I certainly did. But it was a good book. Anyways, next week we will be discussing Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And the following week we'll be discussing I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. So I hope to have a guest with me at some point over the next 2 weeks. But if not, you just get to listen to me again. So thank you for listening in to Read It First, and have a great rest of your day.